Do it. Okay. All right, welcome back to the BigSchoen podcast, Season 2, Episode 1. Finally, it's actually here. No false promises this time. We're getting it done. The Phantom Podcast is no longer the Phantom Podcast, as somebody likes to say. I'm joined with my new co-host here and also employee, Jess. She is coaching now. So she just made the switch. So we've been working on getting her kind of up to speed for the past few months on this. She was formerly in the classroom. I'll kind of let her talk about what she did before. I just want to get her a chance to kind of introduce herself to you guys and whatnot, and just so you have an understanding of a little bit what her coaching style is like, because we're similar but we're different at the same time. Her expertise and the people she's better with working with are definitely different than I am, and she offers a similar but different experience. It's going to go with the brand, but also it's a little bit more relatable for the working woman per se, since she was once a working woman not long ago.
I'm still a working woman.
Well, right, but doing real thing. We're not working in our pajamas and those types of jobs. So, Jess, welcome to the team officially.
Thank you. So, how has it been starting? What was just tell everybody what you were doing before, who you were working with, and kind of how that's helped you into coaching now. Okay. So, I have been a CDC special needs teacher for the past 12 years. This would have been year 13 for me. I decided that it was just kind of time to take a step out of the classroom and start focusing on some different things, and fitness has always been a passion of mine. Specifically over the past 5 to 6 years, really started to grow more and fall in love with it, and wanted to kind of help grow the brand.
And you tried this once before, right? You had, originally, this isn't the first time she's thought about leaving the classroom. Kind of walk us through, what was that?
Oh, yes. So it was right before COVID had happened. I was really kind of looking at a career change or just something different rather than being in the classroom. And COVID happened, and it just kind of seemed like the perfect time to get my personal training certification. So I did that, while everything was shut down. Got certified, and once the schools and the gym started opening back up, I take on a couple of clients there. Kind of in the beginning, I had about 5 or 6 people who I worked with, and I got to learn a lot of different things, some do's and don'ts in training, but it just kind of fizzled out because the classroom was so involved, and I just did not have the time to devote to training and train myself at the same time. So, it kind of just fizzled a little bit, but I still kept up with some current things in training, and at least,
And for those that don't know, you weren't in just a general ed class. You were in special ed. So what was that like? And kind of explain how that related to a bit of the burnout, because I feel that's a little different than just not a knock on general education teaching, but special education teaching is a whole different ball game and different skills and whatnot, and the lifestyle that accompanies with it, because I believe you took a lot of that home.
Yeah. So I was in special ed. I taught kids with severe to profound disabilities in a self-contained classroom. So these students were anywhere from the ages of 5. I had some kindergartners at some point, but mostly I taught 3rd grade through 5th grade, and they were mostly students with autism, physical disabilities, emotional disabilities, and behavioral concerns. Cognitive impairments as well. So my day was mostly spent focusing on them. And by the time I got home in the afternoon, I was exhausted. So I would get up and train myself at 3 a.m., then go into the classroom because I didn't have a planning period. I did not have a lunch. So the time that I got work done was usually before they got there, so 5:30 till 7, because as soon as the door opened, there they are. And then in the afternoons, I was exhausted, and I would come home and go directly to bed after dinner at 6. So I did not have time to be taking on clients, or I could barely take care of myself.
No doubt. And so that kind of led to the look into the other things. So what kind of parallels, now that you've been coaching for a little bit, you've had that experience in the past, you were working with the kids for 13 years, so it wasn't just this is a couple years of teaching, it was 13. So this was a real sought-after decision. Mm-hmm. And so whenever we made the decision for her to pull out of the classroom, we thought long and hard, is this the right choice? And she still wanted to be involved, I believe, with helping people and helping teach people. So there's definitely some parallels between teaching students, especially because those students, no disrespect, it's you have to communicate it down at like the lowest level to where they understand it, which is very similar, funny enough, to like coaching people through exercise. And that being said, like the reason for that is like, imagine you're like in the most stressful situation of your life. Like that's what exercise is to a lot of people, especially like coming out. Like it's very hard to teach people like how to feel things, where they're supposed to feel it and whatnot. And then as soon as you get like their heart rate going, like they're in this basically like elevated position. So like to explain what they need to do, we need to be able to deliver it in the simplest and quickest manner so it can get picked up quickly. So there's definitely like you're used to like explaining stuff and getting like kids to calm down. So like how do you think you'll be able to take that into coaching clients and stuff?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also it's also about learning different learning styles. Everybody learns differently. Just like in the classroom, us as adults learn in a variety of different ways. So some of us are visual learners and that we learn more from being able to see videos or watching somebody do the movements. Some of us are more kinesthetic learners in that hands-on approach. We need somebody there to help show us and guide us through these motions. And then some of us are auditory learners, whereas we can just have a conversation and they know that from that conversation I can take what you just talked about and do it. But you have to combine and find what works well for each individual. So just like the classroom, those parallels are very similar.
I like that. So like for your own training, what do you think was like the biggest like takeaway you're going to put into like your coaching style? Because like at the end of the day, like all us coaches, you can ask anyone, that's going to be the driving force to like how we teach our clients is like one, like we felt and understood things, and then the motivation to continue to get better is more often than not selfishly rooted within your own desires to improve your own training, and those experiences are then help you like branch out into somebody else. So it's like, for example, with that, like let's just say we'll use injuries because it happens to a lot of people. Like anytime I've ever had an injury, like I look at it as like, okay, this is an opportunity now for me to fix this for myself and then be able to take this same strategy and potentially help a client with it. Or it's like, all right, I'm trying to do a movement that requires like high like sensory input. I know what this feels like, and so now I can help coach somebody else because this is what we're looking for, whether that be different techniques or whether it be different stances or whatever. Like you as the coach need to know what it feels like before you have somebody else do it. I had this explained to me when I first started. Like you can't have someone do something you've never done before and then try and coach them through it, because you're not going to like, how could you relate to that? Because this is such a physical experience. So like how has your own training helped like prepare you for that from like both the scheduling standpoint, like what it feels like in the gym, and then like kind of on the nutrition side? I'll kind of let you talk about that.
Yeah, the biggest thing I kind of think about when you were talking about that is, in the beginning, I know when I first started training, I would just go to the gym and go through the motions, right? Yeah. So a lot of times we find that we're in there, you're not really focused, your mind is wandering elsewhere. Mine was always wandering back to the classroom and what I needed to do for the day. And I would just go in and just kind of go through the motions. There was no like really focusing on what I was doing and being able to feel and know what muscles I was supposed to be contracting. So now I know and I understand that I have to be able to kind of put away everything that I'm doing in the moment and really focus on being in the gym and being present where I'm at in order to make those gains. Also with the nutrition and scheduling aspect now too, I feel like I understand more of the busy lifestyle and how to work around that. And it doesn't have to be an extended time in the gym. You don't have to come in and spend hours and hours in the gym to be able to make progress. You can work around your busy schedule and find times throughout the day to be able to get into the gym. Nutrition hacks to kind of help you maintain and stay on track as you're managing your busy schedule, keeping protein shakes in the fridge, keeping things in your desk that you can grab and go quickly for those days that you're not able to sit down and have a meal or have your lunch. Those are some, I guess, is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, that's good. Because like I've only worked a handful of jobs where it was like had that difficulty of like, oh, I'm not going to be able to eat. Like, so it's good to be like that you're able to relate to like, hey, like this is just not feasible. Like I understand this conceptually, but I've never felt that. But that's like a unique thing that you bring to the demographic of people that you're working with, especially right now, is that you understand like, hey, like sure, here's the general plan, but we need to have a plan in case the plan that we have set up can't work. These fail safes, and like you've experienced that firsthand because like
it gets busy.
Yeah,
and sometimes you don't get lunch because there's a crisis that happens during your lunch. Like you can meal plan this beautiful lunch and it's macro friendly and you've got your proteins and everything that you need, but then somebody needs you at that current moment and you're not able to eat, and then by the time you are able to eat, you don't really have the time to sit down. So having quick things that you can just kind of grab and drink and eat on the way as you're going from point A to point B, like that's something that's doable, and it comes up in our day-to-day routines now.
And I think that kind of separates you from, even though you are a young trainer in your career, like young trainers coming fresh out of college kind of I don't think they realize that, hey, like they're not, the people you're working with are not 20 and they're not in college or in school, and like fitness is probably not their priority. And so to say, oh, like just stick to your meal plan, it's like, yeah, okay, bud, that's not realistic. But
it's not practical.
You understanding that like already puts you a leg up on these people that are like base level experience the same with you, but don't have the practical application to it. Because there's one thing to have all the textbook stuff, but to be able to like apply that to the person that's in front of you, that's huge. So like, who is the type of person you're like really looking to like work with like right now and help? Like who do you think you'd be best suited for that kind of matches up with your style?
I think I'm looking for anybody who's willing to make a change or just wants some extra guidance and some accountability, right? Women, men, it doesn't particularly matter to me. I just like people who want to learn and want to make a difference and want to make a change.
Okay. So would that be like the average mom, the teacher, like who's that kind of, let's pinpoint that in a little bit more.
Does it have to be pinpointed in?
A little bit. It's kind of helpful to know who you're after. Like I'm after like people that are already pretty serious, like understand there's a task to do and like have like these high-end goals, like whether it's competitive bodybuilding, powerlifting, like that. So like that's the niche that I like tailor myself to. Obviously like I work with a vast variety of people, whether it's people trying to get out of the pain, whether it's people that just want to be generally fit. But it's kind of helpful to know, too, who you feel like you would be the best served to, like your skill set.
I think I love newbies. People who are fresh, never step foot in a gym, that lack the confidence, don't know what to do, because I have been there. I have had numerous trainers prior to working with you. Numerous trainers. And even still, I didn't feel that I was really understanding what I was doing. And my movements were not great. I mean, you've seen my movements in the past. In the past. Now they're fantastic. They were.
Yeah.
They were not so hot. And I didn't see the progress that I was aiming for at that time. Because, you know, I don't feel like I was really taught how to do the movement. So I really like working with people who are new, eager to learn, wanting to make a change. Doesn't matter your age. If you're young, if you're old, it does not matter, you know.
So, like, let's just take us through, like, kind of your onboarding process when you get somebody new that comes on. Like, what's that like with you? I know it's very similar to the style that I do, but I think it's good for people to hear, like, they kind of, like, we had this funnel type system, but how you, like, navigate that, how it becomes your coaching experience. Obviously, you're attached to me, but, like, you're your own coach, and I'm not over here dictating, hey, you're going to do it this way and this way. Like, you have your own style. So, like, what's it like? You get someone that, hey, they're going to meet with you, like, hey, I would love to talk with you. You're like, cool, you get the call set up. Like, walk us through, like, that process and, like, kind of what people can kind of expect.
Okay. So once you reach out and you're interested, what I like to do is, set up a call, whether that be over the phone or even a Zoom call, just to kind of talk face-to-face about what you're doing, what your goals are, what you've currently been doing, some things that have worked well, some things that have not worked so well. In both training and nutrition aspect, because a lot of the women who I've talked with or spoken with, they've been trying fad diets or, chronically dieting for years. And so just kind of hearing about what they've tried and what they feel that is successful for them and what they feel that is not successful or sustainable for them. And then based on all of that, we kind of talk about where we want to move forward into the gym and in our training aspect. So I'll kind of go over just my training philosophy and just kind of how that hands-on approach works and what we provide as a coaching company. And then from there, we kind of just, keep talking to see if you're a good fit.
Nice. And so let's say, okay, cool, I want to work with you. Like, what's the, first step after that? Like, where do you go?
So first step after that was we send some movement assessments.
She says screener every time.
It's a screener.
That's not a word.
It is a word. It is a word.
It's not.
In the classroom, we do screeners, right?
Screens, probably, but...
No, it's not. It's a screener.
Continue on. So you do the movement assessment.
We do the movement assessment. And then once we get those videos back...
So what does that look like? It just... I don't know what it is.
Well, I do this too. You should inquire to find out.
I do this too. So, like, whenever we go into... Like, we're looking at shoulder, hip, and knee function whenever we see somebody. Because that's going to be the foundation of, like, all movements that we're picking. So, like... For example, and this takes a matter of like 2 to 3 minutes. It just helps us like tailor the program off the start to you. So we're looking to see like how your overhead is, like how your knees and hips rotate, and how much flexion stuff you have. That way, we can kind of get ahead of the game in terms of movement selection. So let's just, as opposed to like if you go find a bajillion workouts online or like a template from somebody, like you might not be the right person for a shoulder press because you don't have the overhead mobility at the current moment. So with us doing that, we start to nail it in because like especially most goals are going to be like physique driven or aesthetically driven or performance. If you're in the wrong position, we're going to go back to like she was talking about earlier. Oh, you're doing some movements, but you're not actually seeing what you want because it's probably not the right movement for you, and the execution is going to be off. So like that's where we start, and then kind of like where do you go from there with that?
So then, based off how they are in the assessment. Then we would tailor a program specifically for their goals and how many days that they can get into the gym, whether they're in an actual gym or whether they're at home. We just develop a plan based off of that.
So they're not. So every person is getting their own thing.
It's very different. Yeah, it's very different. It's not your custom copy and paste. Here is the same workout that we give all of our clients when they're onboarding. That I think something that definitely sets us apart because I know in the past I have had a trainer, and when I came on to their team, I was given the same workout that everybody got whenever they first come on. We were all on the same program. So you would just talk about what type of split did you want. And I know when I came on, I wanted a push-pull leg split. So that was one of my 3-day splits. And that was the program that was sent to me. And then every 6 to 8 weeks, when they would get tired of the program or you would, kind of work your way through it, then they would send another program out, which everybody got. So it wasn't individualized for my needs, I know.
And on that, while we're talking about that, like you were making your own progressions on a week-to-week basis, weren't you? Like, and you would get, one form feedback video a week?
Yes, I would send one video. I would pick the video or the movement that I felt like I was struggling with the most, and I would send that video in, and I would get a response within 24 hours. As to what corrections that I needed to do, if I needed to up the weight, but there was never any guidance on how many reps should I be hitting. Is this the appropriate weight? It wasn't in the moment. I couldn't, if I had a question in the moment or I wasn't sure, I was like, oh, is this right? I wouldn't hear back. It'd be a couple of hours later and I'd already be gone for the gym by that point.
If it was even that day.
If it was even that day, because they did say prior that they would respond within 24 hours.
Which, sure, that's some feedback, but the way that we try and do it now is we're hitting you back more than likely within that moment. Like we try and do it within like a couple minutes, especially like with Jess, she's completely on the online sphere, so like hers is like rapid fire, like right then and there. So you have that guiding eye with you as if it was very similar to an in-person moment. Mm-hmm. And I'm the same way as long as I'm not in a session. And so that I believe is very key because it saves you from basically like, okay, cool, you did this movement for the remaining sets that you had, but you messed it up, so next week we have to change, so you just basically wasted time. So that approach is unique and not very common.
It's not common at all. I've never met anybody else who does it.
Right. So yeah, which is how it should be though, because you're paying for coaching, not paying for a program, which is essentially what you're getting. And especially with it being individualized as opposed to like that whole like group effort, like just if you start to think about it conceptually, it's like, why would I be doing the same program for somebody that's 10 times stronger than me or 10 times weaker than me? It's like, that doesn't really make sense. Why would Susie in accounting be doing the same program as Jess, who's about to step on stage in 2 weeks? It doesn't make any sense. So like from that perspective, it's like, okay, if we step back and think, your program needs to be tailored to you. So that's why we do the assessment. That's why we are so hands-on, is because we want to get you to your goal in the most efficient way as possible. And that requires a bit of faith, like on your end too, like as the client, be like, okay, like this is a learning experience, because we're not just going to hand you everything and then expect you to not pick some stuff up. Like we want to teach you along the way. Like we're going to give you all that you need, but like with the expectation from our end is that we're trying to empower you as the individual to grow and not just be like, okay, I lost the program. Because, for example, like Jess, whenever I met her when we first started training, she was still running the same program from that same coach. And it was just like, she's like, how are you progressing? Like, I don't know. I'm just kind of going up for 1 week, maybe not the next. And it's like, how long were you with this person? And now,
I was with
to
her
this
for quite a while.
person's credit, like, she came, her first coach, trash, don't care. I will literally say it here, should not be coaching. The second coach helped her a lot with getting her like hormones and stuff back in balance.
Gut health, all of that was a phenomenal experience.
Yeah. From a movement perspective and programming perspective, not the best.
Yeah, so much.
Not the best. Not the best. But you didn't really learn that much from that, and that's not the greatest. It just wasn't that. Going on a tangent here. So, like, that's why we are very adamant about making the program for you and evolving with you. So, like, the longer you, like, some of my best clients have been with me for 3 years. And the changes they've seen over time has been tremendous, because it is a long game at the end of the day. Like, fitness is a long game. This is a marathon that we're going to do for our whole life. So, like, how do you help translate that understanding, like, into your clients as a, hey, this isn't an immediate fix, whether it be on the nutrition side or the training side? Like, why do you think that teaching, going back to your teaching career, is so important in this whole thing?
Because it's going to set us up for success in the long run. And it's also going to help establish patterns that are more sustainable. Whereas if we were just to give you some meal ideas or, meal plans, you're not learning anything from that. Same thing with your movements. If I just give you that and I don't teach you how to do these movements, you're not gaining anything, and it's not sustainable in the long term.
Yeah, you're no better off than when we found you.
Right. So, for example, back to my first coach. Whenever I tried to prep for a show,
did you copy?
My first crash and burn experience in trying to participate in contest prep, I was on a meal plan. And of course, meal plans are not supposed to be written by personal training coaches, because that is out of our scope of reference. Those are supposed to be done by registered dietitians and nutritionists, but not your general coach. We can give you suggestions, but we can't say, this is your plan, follow it to a T. Correct?
Correct, yeah. We can toe the line, but at the end of the day, like, that's extremely illegal. And the risk, I think this is where you're about to go, like
yes.
the risk of, like, eating disorders and disordered eating patterns in meal plans is extremely, like, correlated, if not causated by the meal plan, because it keeps you so latched onto this. Like,
yeah,
I believe we're going to go into the goldfish story here.
Yes. So, I was put on a meal plan, but I was never taught the rhyme or the reason why. I didn't understand, like, the choices of the food that I was given. He wanted me to eat at certain times. He also wanted me to not have carbs after a specific hour. Doesn't really do anything there. But I ran this plan for quite a while, and I lost a lot of weight. I'm not gonna lie, I lost a lot of weight, but also because my output was high and I was in a calorie deficit. So, was it his plan? Or was it just the fact that I was eating less and doing more? It was probably the latter. But this plan really, really messed with me mentally. So much so that I will never forget the day that I cried in the morning because I ate a couple of handfuls of goldfish. And I just thought, okay, the world has come to an end. I have messed my whole day up. I couldn't have goldfish. Or I had another day where I ate a Milky Way on the way home from work, because it had been a very stressful day. And then I proceeded to go run 2 miles after that to make up for having a Milky Way, which is terrible. And then fast forward a few more months later, I ended up, my hormones were completely out of whack. I left that coach and started with another coach, and we had to go through the process, which was over a year of trying to fix my hormones and get everything back regulated, all because of the stress that I was putting under my body when I was with that one coach.
And then when we met, like, your relationship with food was still a little...
It was still bad. And I would revert back to, okay, I need to lose weight. So in my mind, I would automatically default to, well, this was a plan that I used to use back in the day, and I saw results from that. So that must be what I needed to do. And I would still do that. Like, I would literally be like, all right, today we're going to start our diet, and here's what we're doing. We're going to eat at this time. We're going to not have carbs after 12. We're going back to our fish and bags of broccoli. Do not recommend doing that. But that was just a continual cycle because that's what I knew and that's what I thought was correct.
And then we met. I will never forget. She was like, do you eat like these foods? And I was like, I'm having cookies probably almost every other day. And so like at first she's like, you can eat it. I was like, yeah. So like she was kind of weird about it. And then like we went through a real, I did a mini cut with her and she did like a full blown cut, and she got to see like, oh, we can have these foods. It's all just about like fitting within like your macros. Like we went over like how to make this fit, like this and that as a budget, and just like how a variety of different foods can play in there. And she just saw like everything go along, and you were rather surprised the first time. You're like, this was like relatively easy and pretty flexible.
We were still eating a lot.
Yeah.
And we were still eating like a lot of good foods, but I learned how to build those meals around my macros and the calories that I had, but it wasn't something that came overnight.
No.
This was something that it took a lot of work, and it was a lot to learn in the beginning, but now it's second nature. Now, if I wanted to, I wouldn't have to necessarily weigh out 4 ounces of chicken. I can kind of eyeball it now to know what that 4 ounces of chicken looks like.
Exactly.
Which is way more sustainable in the long run than having to get the scale out every single time that I want to have a chicken breast.
But like, it is good to rein it in here and there and like calibrate the skill. Everything's skill building. And there's times when like your training will be like harder and be able to push the needle more based off how you like. But like when you were in the classroom and we were prepping for the show, it was like, hey, this is going to be in the school year. It's like, all right, maybe we move like some stress here to allow for this, since you're going to be doing all the testing and this and that, and just understanding that it's just like turning the dials and knobs like throughout training and nutrition over the course of life. It's big. So that's just like, that's a good insight on like how you are like coaching, and like how it is that you've taken your experience from both a teacher and as an athlete yourself and blending it and how you can help people. So for those that are looking to like reach out, that's not like through me, like what's the best way they can find you and whatnot?
The best way is probably either through one of the social media platforms, either Facebook or Instagram, and we can link the handles to that.
It's what, JR Massey?
JR Massey 11.
For now.
Yeah. On Instagram, and then at Jessica Massey on Facebook. Or you could reach out through our website at BigSchoenCoaching.com and just inquire in the link at the bottom.
Well, guys, thanks for joining us. If you could like, share, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
See ya.